My name is Yumi. I'm 37 years old and I work as a bookkeeper. It's not the most glamorous job, but I've always enjoyed it. Numbers make sense to me. They're logical, predictable. There's a certain comfort in knowing that when everything else in life feels uncertain, numbers never lie. I live in Dallas, Texas with my 2 kids, Kenji, who's 14, and Hana, who's 10. They're my world. Everything I do, every choice I make is for them. Life hasn't been easy, though. 5 years ago, my husband passed away in a car accident. One moment, he was here, kissing me goodbye before heading to work, texting me in the afternoon to ask what I wanted for dinner. And then, just like that, he was gone. I remember the way the world blurred in those first few months. People spoke to me, but their words didn't register. Friends and family came over, bringing food, sitting with me, trying to comfort me, but nothing could fill the emptiness. The hardest part was telling the kids. Kenji was old enough to understand, but Hana, she kept asking when Daddy was coming home. I didn't know how to answer her. I had always imagined us growing old together, watching our children graduate, getting to that stage where we could finally relax after years of working hard. But life had other plans, and suddenly, I was a widow, a single mother. I didn't have the luxury of breaking down. I had 2 kids who needed me, and a mortgage that still had to be paid. So, I pushed forward. I buried my grief under responsibility, waking up early, packing lunches, driving the kids to school, going to work, coming home to help with homework, cooking dinner, cleaning up, making sure they still felt safe. That's what mothers do, right? We keep going. And my job, it became my lifeline. I had started working at my company 8 years ago, back when my husband was still alive. Back then, it was just a way to bring in extra income, to help save for vacations, for the kids' future. But after the accident, it became everything. It kept a roof over our heads. It put food on the table. It gave me purpose when I felt like I was drifting. The people I worked with became like a second family. My boss at the time was kind. He understood what I had gone through and always treated me with fairness and respect. The company itself wasn't huge, but it was stable, and I took pride in my work. I was good at what I did. I never missed deadlines. My books were always balanced. I knew the company's finances inside and out, and I was proud of the fact that my efficiency helped keep things running smoothly. I never thought I had anything to worry about, but life has a way of shifting under your feet just when you think you've found steady ground. Because while I was busy working hard, doing my job, and making sure my kids were okay, changes were happening above me. And soon, I was about to find out that my dedication, my loyalty, my years of service, none of it mattered. The first sign that something was changing came in small, almost imperceptible ways. At first, I didn't pay much attention to it. I was too busy balancing work, taking care of my kids, and making sure our lives ran smoothly. But looking back, I can see the warning signs were there all along. I just didn't recognize them for what they were. It started when my boss, Mr. Caldwell, announced he was retiring. He had been with the company for decades, and though I knew it was coming eventually, I had never really considered what it would mean for me. He had always treated me fairly, recognizing my work and making sure I was compensated properly. Under his management, I never once felt like my job was at risk. Then came the news that his replacement had already been chosen, Mr. Carter. I didn't know much about him, except that he was younger, ambitious, and supposedly full of new ideas that were going to take the company in a bold new direction. At first, I told myself it didn't matter. A new boss didn't change the fact that I was good at my job. I had been at the company for 8 years. I knew the finances inside and out. If anything, he'd probably rely on me to help him transition smoothly. But then, little things started happening. The first time I met him, he barely acknowledged me. When Mr. Caldwell introduced us, I held out my hand, expecting a polite greeting. Instead, he just nodded and said, "Oh, you're the bookkeeper. Not Yumi, not our lead accountant, not even one of our senior employees, just the bookkeeper." It was subtle, but it stung. Then came the closed-door meetings with HR. I wasn't included in them, but I saw them happening. Staff members going in, coming out looking uneasy. people whispering in the break room, a quiet nervousness settling over the office. That's when I started hearing rumors. He's making big changes. He wants to bring in his own team. Some people might be let go. Again, I told myself it had nothing to do with me. But then they reassigned one of my biggest responsibilities, monthly financial reports that I had handled flawlessly for years, to another employee, someone newer, someone who didn't have nearly as much experience. When I asked about it, I got a half-hearted excuse about wanting to spread out responsibilities. And then, one afternoon, I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. I'd stayed late to finish up some reports, and as I was heading to the break room to grab a cup of tea, I heard two managers talking in one of the conference rooms. She's been here a long time, but Carter wants his niece in that role. Are you serious? She has no experience. Doesn't matter, he's already made up his mind. I stood there, frozen. It wasn't just rumors anymore. It was real. They were getting rid of me to make room for his niece. And suddenly, everything made sense. The reassigned work, the distant attitude, the closed-door meetings. They were slowly pushing me out. I should have been furious, and in a way I was. But more than anything, I felt something else. I felt prepared. Because if they thought I was going to just sit there and let them erase me, they had another thing coming. I didn't go home that night feeling defeated. If anything, I felt more awake than I had in months. The shock had passed, and now I was thinking clearly. If they were going to try and push me out, then I needed to make sure they didn't get away with it. I went home, tucked my kids into bed, and sat down at my kitchen table with my laptop. I started gathering everything. I pulled up old emails, proof of my strong performance reviews, emails from my former boss thanking me for my work, records of me catching financial errors that had saved the company thousands of dollars. I saved copies of reports I had handled, outlining exactly how much responsibility I had carried. I also started keeping track of the little changes, every task they quietly reassigned, every instance where I was excluded from meetings I once would have been part of, every new responsibility that conveniently ended up in the hands of Carter's niece. I documented it all. I wasn't just collecting information, I was building a case. Because if they were going to fire me, I was going to make sure it wasn't on their terms. A week later, the inevitable happened. I was called into HR for a performance review, a meeting that had never been sudden or unannounced before. As soon as I stepped inside and saw Carter sitting across from me, I knew this wasn't about performance at all. The HR manager, a woman named Lisa, gave me a forced, overly polite smile. "Yumi, we wanted to go over some concerns regarding your recent work." I kept my face neutral. Concerns? Carter leaned forward, clasping his hands like he was about to deliver bad news he wanted to sound sympathetic about. "We've noticed a decline in efficiency in some areas of the finance department," he said. "There have been inconsistencies in reporting, missed deadlines, things that don't align with the standards we need to uphold moving forward." I almost laughed. Inconsistencies? Missed deadlines? Not only were those complete lies, but they had actively taken work away from me in the last few months. They had set me up to fail, but they hadn't counted on me keeping track of every single move they made. "I see," I said calmly. "Could you provide specific examples?" Lisa and Carter exchanged a quick glance, as if they hadn't expected me to ask for proof of their own claims. Lisa flipped through some papers, clearing her throat. "Well, it's more of an overall pattern rather than specific incidents." "An overall pattern," I repeated. "I'd like to see documentation of that, please." Carter's jaw tightened. He wasn't used to being questioned. "Yumi, this isn't about paperwork. This is about the direction the company is moving in." There it was. They weren't even trying to hide it anymore. "So my work is no longer in line with the company's new direction?" I asked, keeping my voice steady. Lisa shifted in her chair. Carter exhaled sharply, then leaned back like he was tired of the whole conversation. "Look, Yumi, we value your time here, but we just don't think this is the right fit anymore. We're offering you a transition package along with severance if you choose to step away voluntarily." "Step away voluntarily?" I raised an eyebrow. "You're asking me to resign." Lisa gave me that corporate smile again, the one that's supposed to make you feel like you're being offered a good deal instead of being pushed off a cliff. We think it would be the best option for all parties involved. I let a long silence stretch between us. And then I smiled, because I could tell they thought they had won. I appreciate the offer, I said, but I won't be resigning. Lisa blinked. Carter's face darkened. I'm sorry, he said. I'm not resigning, I repeated, sliding a folder across the table, and I'd strongly suggest you rethink your decision. Lisa hesitated before opening it, her eyes widening as she flipped through the pages. Emails, reports, records of how my responsibilities had been reassigned, documentation of the clear, deliberate steps taken to push me out, everything. I turned to Carter, keeping my voice calm and professional. You can terminate me if you want, but I'd advise you to consider what wrongful termination lawsuits can cost a company, especially when they involve clear favoritism and nepotism. His expression was unreadable, but I saw the flicker of panic in his eyes. Lisa cleared her throat. Yumi, let's not make this adversarial. We can discuss other... I've already contacted a lawyer, I interrupted. This isn't a negotiation. If you fire me, I will take legal action, and I will win. Carter's face turned red. He looked like he wanted to argue, to push back, but he had nothing. I had backed them into a corner, and I wasn't done yet. Because not only was I going to make them pay, but I was going to watch them fall apart after I left. The moment I walked out of that office, I knew I had won. Carter had barely been able to hide his anger when he realized I wasn't going to just roll over and disappear like he had expected. Lisa had nervously flipped through my documentation, already knowing that they had no real defense. They had tried to push me out quietly, but I had backed them into a corner with cold, hard evidence. The next few weeks were a blur of legal meetings, emails, and back-and-forth negotiations. My lawyer didn't waste time. He knew we had them. The proof of their fabricated claims against me, the deliberate reassignment of my duties, the hiring of Carter's niece, despite her complete lack of experience, it all pointed to wrongful termination. They tried to settle quickly. They offered 3 months severance at first, hoping I'd take it and walk away quietly. I refused. Then they upped it to 6 months. Again, I refused. I wasn't just looking for money, I wanted justice. So we filed the lawsuit. And suddenly, Carter wasn't as confident anymore. When the news of my lawsuit started circulating, I started getting calls from old coworkers. Yumi, people are panicking, the execs are scrambling. They're trying to keep it quiet, but everyone knows why you were really fired. Carter is furious. He thought you'd just disappear. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. Because while he was busy trying to cover his tracks, the company was already starting to unravel. And then, the real cracks started to show. First, clients started pulling out. Turns out, people don't like working with a company that's being sued for unethical behavior. I had built strong relationships with long-term clients, and many of them started asking questions. They wanted to know why I was gone. They wanted to know what was happening behind the scenes. When they didn't like the answers they got, they took their business elsewhere. Then, the financial reports started slipping. The new hires, the ones Carter had brought in to replace me, didn't know what they were doing. I had handled so much of the company's financial structure that, without me, everything was falling apart. Reports were late, errors were everywhere. Payroll issues started cropping up. I wasn't there to fix things anymore, and people noticed. 3 months after I left, I got a call from an old coworker. Yumi, you're not going to believe this. What? Carter is on the chopping block. The board is furious, they're losing money, and now they're investigating how he's been running things. I smiled. It was only a matter of time. And then, 2 weeks later, I got another call from the company. They wanted me back. Not only that, they were willing to double my salary. We know things didn't end well, Lisa had said carefully over the phone, but we'd love to discuss bringing you back on board, with a higher compensation package, of course. I let out a short laugh. Lisa, I already have a new job. And I did. Because while they had been falling apart, I had already moved forward. I had taken a position at a much better firm, one that actually valued my expertise and treated me with respect. I understand, Lisa said, her voice tight, But perhaps if we could meet and discuss. There's nothing to discuss, I cut in. You made your choice, and I made mine. I could practically hear the disappointment in her silence. Best of luck, Lisa, I said, and then I hung up. I never looked back. The company? It continued to fall apart. Carter was forced to resign after a year of disastrous leadership. The firm never fully recovered from the financial mess he created. And me? I thrived. I had a better job, a higher salary, and a future that was mine. I had walked away with my dignity, my reputation, and my peace of mind. And most importantly, I had won. With the company behind me and a new chapter ahead, my life changed for the better in ways I never expected. At my new firm, I felt valued. The leadership actually listened to me. My skills were recognized. And for the first time in years, I worked in an environment where I didn't feel like I had to constantly prove my worth. The difference was night and day. I wasn't micromanaged. I wasn't treated like I was replaceable. I wasn't forced to deal with office politics that benefited the wrong people. Instead, I was given opportunities to grow, to lead projects, to build something for myself rather than spending my time cleaning up other people's mistakes. And financially, I was better off than ever. Not only did I get a higher salary, but I also negotiated better benefits, a better work-life balance, and, most importantly, peace of mind. I didn't have to stress over money disappearing or worry about incompetent leadership putting my career at risk. I finally had stability. And while I thrived, my old company kept crumbling. The lawsuit I filed didn't just cost them money, it cost them credibility. No one trusted Carter's leadership after what had happened. The board tried to patch up the damage, but it was too late. By the time Carter was forced to resign, the company was already hemorrhaging money. Clients had left. Employees had left. The reputation they once had, gone. One day, I bumped into an old coworker while out shopping. "Yumi, wow, you look amazing," she said, genuinely excited to see me. "Thanks," I smiled. "How have you been?" She shook her head, lowering her voice. "You wouldn't believe how bad things got after you left. They tried to cover it up, but everyone knew the truth. Carter ruined everything. The company isn't even the same anymore." I just nodded, sipping my coffee. "And get this," she leaned in. "Guess who reached out last week?" I raised an eyebrow. "Let me guess. Lisa?" She laughed. "Not just Lisa, the board. They're desperate. They're offering crazy salaries trying to fix the mess." "And?" I asked. "No one wants to go back." I smiled, because in the end they did this to themselves. They had made their choices, and now they were living with the consequences. As for me, I had already moved on, and I had never been happier. Life now is better than I ever imagined. I wake up without the weight of stress sitting on my chest, without dreading emails or last-minute urgent meetings that only exist to cover up someone else's incompetence. My mornings are calm. I make coffee, read the news, and actually enjoy breakfast instead of rushing out the door. My kids, Kenji and Hana, have noticed the change too. "Mom, you don't look tired all the time anymore," Hana said to me one morning, completely unprompted. That one hit me. I hadn't realized how much of my exhaustion had been visible, how much of it had become a normal part of who I was back then. But she was right. Now I have energy. I have time. I actually get to enjoy my weekends instead of spending them catching up on unfinished work or worrying about what fresh nonsense Monday will bring. My new job gives me everything I was missing before. I work with people who respect me, who actually want to hear my input, who don't see me as some disposable cog in the system. My work is recognized, valued, and rewarded. And because I'm making more money, I don't have to watch every dollar the way I used to. I took the kids on a trip to Seattle last month, something I would have hesitated to do before because I was always thinking, what if something goes wrong at work while I'm gone? What if they try to replace me? Now, I don't have to worry about that. Now, when I take time off, I actually take time off. I finally got around to fixing up the house, too, something I had put off for years because I never had the time or money to do it the way I wanted. I repainted the living room, redid the kitchen countertops, even splurged on a small garden out back that I tend to on weekends. It's funny how much peace small things can bring when you finally get the chance to appreciate them. And my old company, I don't even think about them anymore. They tried to come after my career, and now they don't even have a company worth saving. I don't check in. I don't ask how things are going. I simply don't care. Because for the first time in my life, I'm truly free, and I wouldn't trade that for anything.